All right, so I'm recording this demo. This is our second match motion pipeline step. So you're going to go through the whole process again, but very quickly. Obviously, first thing is you need some sort of footage, right? And you need to track this footage in After Effects. We've been using the 3D camera tracker that's built into After Effects to track camera and let it do its thing. There is the opportunity for you to use different 3D camera trackers as well. There is a 3D camera tracker built into Cinema 4D. There is a 3D camera tracker built into Blender. Not Cinema 4D Lite, but the full version. I'm not super familiar with either of those. After Effects is the simplest, but at the same time it gives us the least amount of control. One of the benefits of using like Cinema 4D's built-in camera tracker is that you wouldn't need to use After Effects for the first step. So, after this finishes, it's what we've had before, right? We have all the tracking marks. Obviously, we can go and select the ones that we want, and then we want to right-click, create ground plane and origin, create solid. We've done all that before. This is nothing new. So nothing new so far. Everybody with me, right? So the thing about the pipeline is we all need to complete this step first before we move on to the next. So let's all go ahead and track this footage or track your own footage, whatever. You can use your own footage, but I'm not responsible if it doesn't work. That's not you. There are also some 3D plugins that allow you to go from After Effects directly to Unreal. They're third-party plugins. I haven't used any recently. That would potentially allow you to skip the middle step that we're doing today. But the pipeline that we're learning today is the most reliable way of doing this. Anybody need any help getting this step done? Remember, there's a lot of steps in this pipeline. If you mess up any one of them, it could completely ruin everything. If you do not have a good camera track at this point in After Effects, because maybe your footage isn't working out well, it's too motion blurred or whatever, it's not going to get any better in the second or third steps. So if it doesn't look good here, if the plane is not sticking to the ground in After Effects, you might as well not even move forward. Maybe do a reshoot, rethink how you're going to do things, maybe use a different tracker. The point is yeah, if it just doesn't look good here, don't waste your time moving forward because it's not going to get better. We'll move forward in a minute. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of the homeworks were really good. Object stuck, moved with the camera, really great. That's exactly what we want. So I know most of you can do it. It's interesting. I teach this class to two different types of students. One is at this school where the students are film and video majors. And then the other one is an engineering school where the students are more 3D students. And believe it or not, the 3D students, their video footage is not as good, so they have a lot more errors. And like this cube on the floor here would be wiggling around, it would look like it was stuck. But y'all did a lot better job. There we go. We waiting on anybody else? I don't want to skip anybody. Okay. Okay, so now let's move into new territory, right? Now, all we have to do, we should save the file first. We can't export it till we save it, so save your After Effects file. I don't really care what you save it as, just save it. It's a good thing to save in any software. And then the next thing that we need to do is go to File, Export, Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter. This is going to allow us to save this out as a .c4d file. File, Export, Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter. It's going to give you an error. It's going to say, hey, I found 2D layers. That's the video layer. This will not be exported. That's cool. I don't care. That's fine. It's just going to export our 3D camera and our solid. And we're going to recreate the video layer in Cinema anyways. So click OK. And then save it somewhere. I'm going to call mine Test 2. Save it on my desktop or something. Save. So nothing happens. You created that file. It saves to your hard drive. Now you need to go and find that file. So wherever you saved it, go find it. And double click it. Open it up. So let me close down Cinema. And assuming that all the computers are licensed, wasn't sure if this was going to happen. The tricky thing about this class is that there's no way for me to actually preview with your accounts as students what's going to happen. I can preview on my own. Oh, you actually have it. Okay. Is it going to work? This is actually tied to your SVA account. Right, it's attached to your computer, not this one. I mean, it's just the light version. Let's see if I can get some. Supersedes it, but he said he had ripped it out
Is it?
and reinstalled it.
Where's a good example?
This one, saying no license because there isn't a license,
Right.
but we don't want to use the full version anyways.
Yeah, that's interesting because also it's like the institutional license is what activates it.
Yeah.
The enterprise, SVA enterprise license.
Trial would help us just for today.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
Okay. So
You're good till next week.
yeah,
And we'll figure it out.
I'm just gonna take a picture of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it did to get it to work on mine, which is the light version.
So yeah, 11/16. So 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to open it up and see if it?
If y'all click activate on the trial, that should let you in. And we'll just live with that for the time being. Yeah.
Why stop like this?
Okay.
Wait, restart it.
I did like 3 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did this when you logged in?
Yeah. I tried 2 different email.
And you tried the regular SVA email for?
Yeah, this is the
Why don't you try quitting Creative Cloud and restarting it? Well, that's not even going in for your thing.
No, it's a separate. It's weird, it doesn't even prompt me for any license.
That is strange.
So what had happened is wherever the image is from, I guess, somebody else uses Cinema 4D, wherever we got it from. So they had like the legit
The full
OG
version.
right?
Yeah.
Which we don't have a license for, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah,
But
that's
it was
so strange.
installed, so when that gets installed, that overwrites the light
light
version,
version.
which comes bundled with After Effects.
Gotcha.
And the only way to get that back is to uninstall After Effects and the full version, reinstall After Effects.
Do you know if maybe you check to see if we had licenses for the full version? Because it wouldn't surprise me if the school did.
I mean, if they did, that would be fine.
Yeah. Would that work for having the full version on there for licenses?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that gets us in, like the trial's gonna work for right now.
Cause if the package that, cause we have like Adobe admins and stuff like that,
Right.
and if that were the full version was included in the Premiere package, or the, like the whole
Yeah.
CC,
Yeah.
that would be okay.
Yeah, I mean, if it does, that's fine. Yeah, I was just trying to do it without any license. 'Cause I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Totally.
Alright, so a couple people are in. You click OK. Should let you in.
Yeah, for the trial version, we're doing
The trial version doesn't seem to be working for some reason. On these computers. Yeah, that's not it. Okay.
Alright.
Trial version's working.
Sounds good. I'll talk to him when he gets back.
Alright, thank you.
Alright, thanks.
This is fine for now though, Brett. Anybody else? Problem? So this is an SVA issue, this isn't a pipeline issue, alright? This is a... If you went home on your own computer and you had not installed Cinema 4D, it would be absolutely fine. You would have the light version. Okay, you may get, once you have Cinema open, you may have like a dialog start box. You can just close that crap down. What we want to see is this, and what you should see is a colored solid on an invisible grid. If I flash back to After Effects for a second, that kind of looks similar. Look at that, which is what we want, right? And if I scrub the timeline in Cinema, oh, look at that camera movement. Very cool. Also, like, how many frames is it? Well, it's the same length as it was in After Effects. It's because this is the actual camera movement coming from After Effects with the keyframes. Everything's here. It's just we don't see the video because the video is not set up yet. So now we're in a 3D program with our 3D camera. So now we can go to the next step. So this step that I'm showing you next here, this is more just to help you get your bearings in the 3D program. This is not actually, the setup of the video background and stuff, that's not necessarily actually required. So some of this that I talk about, I'll let you know when, but some of it can be skipped and we can just save right for Unreal. The first thing that we need to do though is, you don't have to do this, but just watch. You don't have to change this camera like I am, but just watch. Remember in After Effects, we said that we wanted this thing to sit on the grid, right? On the floor. And in After Effects, that thing is laying on the floor. It's laying on the grid. So if I go into if I go into Cinema and I look at that shape, it should be on the floor, but it's not. Why is it floating above the floor? See what I mean? The floor is down here, the grid is down here. I want that to be on the floor. This disparity right here, that gap, if we exported this to Unreal and used it, we're going to see it's going to look like our objects are floating on top of the floor. If we want to place something on the floor in our video, we better make sure that it's actually aligned to the grid, sitting on the grid. Otherwise, it's going to look like it's floating, like it is right now. Now, complete disclosure with you, I don't know why this happens. It's pretty easy to fix. We're going to fix it right now. But this is just a quirk of this pipeline. I'm not sure why After Effects insists on adding a little bit of height to this. So we're going to fix it. So this is pretty easy to fix. So over on the right here, this is the outliner view or the objects view in Cinema. If you click the little plus icon, you can see everything that's attached to our object here. We want to click on the top one, the parent, okay? The camera and the solid are both parented to this what is called test01.aep-raw for me. If you move either of these individually, you're going to be getting yourself into trouble. We want them to move as a unit. So select the top one, and this is really simple. Down here in the attributes panel, where it says coordinate, change the y value, which is up and down, to 0. And actually, you can see if I just use my mouse, you can see changing it makes it closer to the grid or farther away from the grid. Boom. Now it's on the grid. That's all we got to do, just to fix that little quirk. And maybe if you scrub your footage now, it's more obvious that it's sitting on the grid. And it might not seem like a big deal, but in camera tracking, if it's not perfect, you're going to see drift, and it's not going to look like it matches up. Everybody with me so far? Good, good. Yeah. We are supposed to see it from above, right? But where is it at? Did it ever move? Yours and mine are the same level. For some reason, see that this says it starts at 600, frame 683. Well, there's no because it's not that long, right? So, for some reason, did you move? Did you So again, just to reiterate, we selected the parent here, and we dropped it to the grid by selecting coordinate, and then y was a much bigger number. I don't know if all of our numbers are the same, but mine was like 560 something, and I just put in a 0. So now it's actually on the grid.
Why the axe shouldn't go 0?
What's that?
Why the axe? Like, should we put an axe to 0?
Well, that's a good question. Not necessarily. If you would like to, I mean, it's kind of arbitrary, to be honest, because here, let's look. It's kind of arbitrary. It's just positioned because it's off center right here. If we made it 0, we could. That's fine. It's not going to make any difference, to be honest. And actually, you're right. It should be 0 because when we created it, we said this is the origin. So the middle of this, it should be 0, 0, 0. But really, only the y matters. Because we're going to delete this plane anyways, eventually. So we won't even see it anymore. Good question, though. All right, well, let's see how this lines up with our video, just to make sure that we know what we're doing. So the next thing that I want you to do is I want you to go up top here to create, go down to environment and background. And click background. And it should just put a big white thing. Background is what we're going to stick our video on. It's not a plane in the environment, it's just like an infinite background that has no actual position in 3D space. So now we need to create a material for our video to stick onto this background. So follow along here. We go to Window, Material Manager, Window Material Manager, which pops up this little window here of all of our materials. See, there's just a blue one here because I have a blue solid. The material on this solid is blue. That's what's making it blue. Window, Material Manager. And like with any software, there's a half dozen different ways to do the same thing. You can click on the plus icon here. You can go to Create New Default Material. You can do Command N. We just need to create a new material. So click the plus or Create New Default Material. And you should get another one of these things. It's probably just called matte, and it's probably white. I want you to double click on it. Double click on it and it should open up this window. In Cinema 4D, this is the material editor. This is where we can change the color of the material. Is it transparent? Is it bumpy? Is it foggy? Does it have translucency? Is it glowing? Does it have an alpha channel? All that sort of stuff. This is where you create materials in Cinema. We are just telling it where our image sequence is for our video, so that's pretty straightforward. So in the color menu here, which we're already in, we want to go over here to where it says texture and tell it to use a texture. So click on the 3 little dots off to the right and browse to wherever the image sequence is that you used to track your camera. If you use something different in After Effects than you're using here, obviously it's not going to match up. So use the same footage. And just select the first one in the image sequence and click open. Might ask you this. It's not in the search path. Do we want to create a copy? No. This is just going to copy the files to Cinema 4D's default search path. It's kind of a waste of hard drive space right now. So click no. And after you do that, you should see a little preview of the video in there. If you've done it correctly.
Would it know that it's image sequence?
Not yet.
It doesn't matter if it's video or
What's that?
it doesn't really matter.
It can take a video. Yeah. But we have to do one more step for it to understand that it's actually not just a still picture. Good. Cool. Okay, so on the left side where it says texture, click the little drop down caret. And we need to tell this that it's an animation. It's an animation, it's a video, it's an image sequence. So click animation, and then if you scroll down to the animation section, there's a little button down here at the bottom underneath where it says movie and stuff. Click calculate. This is going to calculate how many frames it is. This will actually turn it into what we call a video texture.
Okay.
Sure. It's just asking permission to use that folder. Okay. So after you've done that, you can go ahead and grab your material and just drag it onto the background and let go. And you should see it pop up. Now, if you scrub your timeline, it shouldn't move. The camera will move, the grid will move, the solid will move, but the video will not play. This is by default. In 3D programs, you usually don't want videos and animations playing unless you explicitly tell the software that you want them to play, because they're very computationally intense on the computer. Yep.
After you click animation, you have to
Go to the bottom.
mouse.
Yeah, go to the bottom and click calculate.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have to do one more thing here to preview. Now what we're doing right now is just so we can see it in Cinema. Once we get more comfortable with this process, you could skip this part. You don't need to set up your background because we're going to export the camera anyways to Unreal.
So you just drag it onto the.
Yep. Just drag it on. Close that window or just move it out of the way. Just drag the material. Okay, we need to set up a couple more things. So if you lost this menu, go ahead and double click on the material in the material editor again to pop up this menu again. We want to go down to viewport and check the little box for animate preview. And now when you scrub your timeline, you should see that it moves. Now it's probably very low quality. Again, this is by design. High resolution textures take up a lot of memory space, a lot of rendering time in 3D programs. So the software assumes, let's keep everything low resolution unless I'm told to display a higher resolution. For our purposes right now, let's display a higher resolution. So below that checkbox for animate preview, there's something called texture preview size. Instead of using the default, why don't we use like 512 by 512? I usually like to use 1024 by 1024. That looks pretty good because the resolution of this footage is 1920 by 1080, so 1024 is basically the resolution. But I found that 1024 by 1024 is kind of choppy on these computers. So I just do 512 by 512 just to make it look a little bit better. Again, ultimately, this isn't going to matter. We're not rendering out the video from here. This is just a preview for today's exercise. So after you've done that, the material's set up. You can close the material editor window. And you can go ahead and preview. Just hit spacebar and let it play.
You said just drag and drop it, right?
Onto.
Oh, yeah.
Is it working? Great. This is kind of weird. Let me see something. Let's check out the location. Location. Oh, that's the background. That's okay. Get that differently. Did you, when you right clicked, did you not do this first?
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. So you have to do the whole thing over again. Yeah, very important when you're coming from After Effects. In After Effects, when you select little tracking marks and you create the solid, remember first, set ground plane and origin. Otherwise the grid's going to be floating off in space somewhere. Which, it might not matter if you can live with that, but it makes much more sense to have the ground on the ground in your video when placing things, I think. All right, we'll check that out. There's actually 3D camera in cinema on the grid working. Why don't we start playing around with some 3D objects? Now remember, we're moving into Unreal, so what we're doing right now is kind of just to get more comfortable in a 3D software. It's not really a part of our pipeline, these 3D objects that we're going to place. I'm just making these to test to make sure everything looks good before we move into Unreal. After you're comfortable with this step, you don't really even need to create the background. Lower the camera to the grid, and then we're going to save it and import it into Unreal. But for today, let's just do a couple other things. So now, if you had 3D models, you could import them into this scene. If we want to use Cinema's built-in simple shapes, you can go up to Create, Mesh, a cube, or whatever, whichever shape you want. I don't know, figure? Sure, let's do a figure. Now, depending on your camera track, it might be very small. So you can scale that stuff up. You sort of like in Unreal, here's scale. So if I want to scale my figure up, I don't know, 100, 100. Well, 100's too big. 10, 10. That's too small. 20, 20, 20. Yeah.
I don't think my background is set for that. His background.
The video's not playing, right? Preview, that's right. Go back to color. Go back to color. Where was the figure?
Yeah.
Create mesh primitive figure. Actually, if you want to have a little bit of fun, instead of using these simple shapes, you could go to Window, Asset Browser. There's some built-in basic things in Cinema, since we don't want to import 3D models right now. And in Objects, there's like appliances and humans. Window Asset Browser.
I don't think we have,
Oh, really?
Empty.
It's empty. It's empty in the full version. Why do I have it? Can you go to Create and add objects to database? Never mind. No fun for you. Oh, what did you do? I just went to Window Asset Browser. I don't know what you guys did. Yeah, what did you all go to?
we just got out of it and we go. For some reason it just popped up.
You literally just opened it up again. Okay. Hey, when in doubt, just close it down, open it back up. There's a bunch of different things in there if you want to try to build a little scene. Some weird things in here. Yeah, you can just drag it in and position it. Remember, if you want it to sit on the grid, the Y needs to be 0. You probably will need to scale it up and stuff too. It's not working? It's not dragging it. Let's do a carrier. Is the track working yet? Like I said, I don't know cinema too well, so we're in uncharted territory here. The video? Mm-hmm. Go to color. Mm-hmm. Put the little dots there. And then click the drop down next to texture. Animation, populate. Good. Go to viewport. Animate preview. Good. Now you can move this window out of the way. Background. There you go. That should animate.
How can I scale up in like a correct like
Proportionally.
yeah.
You can just grab onto the green one, just not scale everything. Oh, that looks good. I was stretching it. What is, I don't even know what this object is. A bathtub? Which button is it? Forget. I think if you what is that? Scale uniformly.
Hi and welcome to my quick start tutorial on how to move, scale and rotate Created. In order to move, scale and rotate, you need to make sure that you are on model mode over here on the left hand side. You do not want to be on any of these other modes as it will not work. You then need to make sure that you have the move tool selected up here. You can then click and drag and you will see that the cube will move freely in all three axes. If you wish to specify the axis that it moves in, click and hold over one of the arrows and you will be able to move it only in that direction. To use the scale tool, click the scale tool over here and then click and drag and that will scale your model uniformly. If you wish to rotate, click the rotate. If you wish to rotate, click the
That
over
was
here
scaling.
and then click and drag and that will scale your model uniformly.
Except this is a different version of cinema. Where is that? Oops. Oh, right there. Duh. It's right here. Yeah. So the scale tool is right here. And the move and the rotate tools are obviously on the left as well, just like Unreal. Remember, you can bring things into the foreground too, just because you don't have to fit everything within the video window. If you want it to be in the foreground, you have to drag it forward.
I just realized the paragraph one is like flat. It's how
Yeah, because all your these need to be the same number.
on
to